Hey there, Dave Paulides, Canine Missing Project, another copyrighted edition for our video page. And I'm back in the silo, and the weather in northern Montana is brutal. It's raining super hard, temperatures dropped. Just a few days ago it was 80 degrees and beautiful, but that's Montana. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 different stories today, and they're compelling for a variety of reasons. And the first thing I want to do is read you a letter I got, and it was actually posted on our most recent video, and it was from a man regarding a relationship. And we are this village, and everyone contributes to the health of that village one way or another. What I mean by that is, in your community we have people that have jobs, and the only way the village functions is if we're working and if we're contributing, not if we're sitting and not if we're getting things for nothing. So my contribution to this man is I gave him a response, and I want you to hear the letter. Dave, I've been estranged from my son for 5 years. I've tried everything in my power to reconcile. He met a girl, had a set of twins, whom I've seen and disappeared from my life. It's been the one great bane of my existence. The hardest part was the fact that there was no huge argument, just a civilized phone call telling me he loved me. He teaches girls what I taught him. He'd hang a Christmas ornament on his tree every year for me, and that was it. Over and done. Although I didn't physically lose my child like you did, on a certain level I can understand and empathize with your immense loss. From one father to another, I hope and pray that one day the memory of him will bring a smile to your face quicker than a tear to your eye. Some days I still cry. I cry too. I concentrate on a quote from my favorite poet, John Keats. Do you not see how a world of pain and sorrow is necessary to school an intelligence and to make it a soul? End of quote. That to you again. Do you not see how a world of pain and sorrow is necessary to school an intelligence and make it a soul? Sometimes this brings me a little comfort. I wish this comforts you too. Have a soul tethered to the millions of people who have lost, cried, wondered why, and eventually came out the other side intact, yet damaged. I know my son has moved on from me. You had no say either. The circumstances are certainly different, but I can understand the pain, the loss. May the memories of our respective sons be a blessing to us both. To all those strange parents out there, it seems to be a bit of a phenomenon. I've tried to do a lot of research to maintain my sanity in the face of a situation that makes no sense. Take heart in knowing you're not alone. Some days it's all I have. The knowing. Wow. To deal with the grief I've gone through with Ed, I had to get help. And I found a grief counselor, and she's helped me a lot. And the other day I went in and I read her this letter. And I said, what would you tell this man? How can he deal with this? And she said, you know, Dave, I see a lot of people every week. And this type of behavior is becoming flagrant. And she used the words, it's a throwaway nation. There's like a culture within us that is willing to throw away a relationship even though it was tantamount in your life. I'd never, ever throw away a relationship with my son or daughter, ever. I do everything in my power to save it. When I was younger, my dad was a tough guy, really tough on me, and everybody knew it. And as we got older and I started to be my own man and secure in my own thoughts, there was a distance between us, but I kept trying to make it work. And I asked my dad if he'd go to counseling with me. He said no. And that hurt. Because I know in my heart that my kids are more important to me than anything. And I'd go to all the counseling in the world trying to make it work. And after going to my counselor, this is what I wrote on the YouTube in response to this individual. I feel your pain. It is horrendous. Personally, I'd be sending him a text every week, humbly telling him I love him, miss him, and I want to extend myself. And go to counseling and bring resolution to our issues. I'd tell him that I wasn't the perfect dad. I tried, and I'm still trying. I will never give up. You are important to me in my life. I want you part of that, whatever it takes. I told him, please don't give up. Your boy may have a mental illness that you don't understand. I said I may also go to a counselor, get their assistance in writing a snail mail letter to him, and the counselor could help with the wording to ensure that it's taken the appropriate way. Myself, I'd send a text to him every week, whether he wants to read it or not. I'd probably keep it light, talk to him about what's going on in my life, saying I wish he was a part of it and that I'd do anything to get him back involved. Unless somebody's really been abused, physically, mentally, I don't understand how somebody can just throw someone away. I've never really understood it. Anyhow, that letter shook me up. I've thought about him every night since I read it. Next letter. I've watched your YouTube videos and read a few of your books. I find them entertaining, interesting, and educational. For some reason, I have the last couple of cases have inspired me to write you about my existence. Over the summer, a couple years ago in the Black Hills of South Dakota on Forest Service land, I'd done a lot of work outside and was tired. It was early for supper, so I walked less than 100 yards behind my mom's house to sit and relax and watch the animals. I've done this numerous times. I planned on sitting there for no more than 20 minutes, and I was going to go inside and eat supper at 5 p.m. I remember walking and sitting on the rock. The next thing I remember is being on a trail a mile or so away. I've been on that trail several times and knew where I was when I woke up. I felt very anxious, a little scared, and it seemed a little dark. Not that the sun had set, but just a little different and darker than it should have been. I walked back to my mom's house, and it was a little after 6 p.m. I made supper and ate, but it took a couple of hours for me to feel normal. If I'd been somewhere I'm not as familiar with, I would not have been lost and maybe ended up missing. I wish I knew what happened. You get a lot of those. Don't quite know what to say. Sounds a lot like an abduction phenomena that we read about in MUFON. Next letter. Hello, David. I've been a long-time reader and listener of your work. I've always had an interest in the paranormal, but I've never had anything major happen to me personally. I'm a mushroom picker. I like to hunt and spend time in the free woods, desert mountains, and in between. I'll keep it short. I was out turkey hunting outside of Sisters, Oregon. I drove out on a Friday evening after work to meet my buddy who was already in the area. These woods I've spent nearly 3 years in for morels and turkey. I know this particular 5 square miles very well. I parked in a spot to camp for the night. I've slept at before. The moment I got out of my van, the woods felt very different. I just figured it was getting late in the season and the birds had moved on. I hiked up and over a small butte to meet up with my buddy. We sat for 3-ish hours, calling the turkey to no avail. As I suspected, the birds found a new country, I guess. I heard some campers laughing and a dog barking in the distance. These woods are all blown out. We drank a beer, saw some deer, chatted until nightfall. He parked at the base of the butte. I had hiked back up and over to the other side. I kept my shotgun out, not shouldered, for I am not above bushwhacking a bird. The moon was out and I didn't use any headlamp. I felt at peace walking quietly. These are the woods moments that I live for. As I came down the butte, I was in an area I've camped at before. Again, I've slept all around these woods. I immediately became disoriented. I felt lost. I stood in the area confused, suddenly remembered, dummy, you parked down the road a ways. I began walking down the dirt road to my actual camp. Now, where I parked my van happened to be the darkest corner of these woods. I turned on my headlamp and began walking into the tree line. I could see my white van in the darkness, but nothing else. I stopped for a second and noted just how dark it was back there. I walked towards my van with firm footsteps. I was not afraid. I began speaking aloud, something I've done since I was a kid when I'm in the woods at night. I opened my van door, took off my pack and my binocular harness. I felt as if I was being watched. I decided to scan the woods. As I look around, I see a pair of stationary eyes quickly dart to the left behind a tree. It's dark now, and I was at the foot of the Butte Hill, so I don't see any form of reference. I climb into my van, close the doors, eat some food, undress, and I get into my bag. I'm reading my book by lamplight. After a while, I hear a strange sound, thinking it's a diesel truck driving up the dirt road. I sit up and listen. I quickly realize it's a helicopter, and I lay back down. The sounds began louder and louder as the helicopter got closer and closer. As the helicopter gets closer, it makes less of a distorted bass sound, and you can hear the chopping of the blades more clearly. This didn't happen. A deep electronic sound came directly over me. Woom, woom, woom. As it passes, I close my book and open my journal. This is when all the deer sets in. As I catalog my experience, I hear a really convincing argument in my head. Quote, you think the birds are gone? You think the woods are blown up and the people left? Leave, move. You have all the power. Get the keys, turn the engine, and go camp somewhere else, end of quotes. I figure I won't sleep if I don't. So I sit up, turn on the van, and drive. I park maybe a half mile away from this site. I lean my head out the van. I see open skies. The moon is out. I feel at peace. I'll go back in bed and fall asleep immediately. Nothing like it has happened before. It happened the last week of May 16th, 2021. That was last week. Thank you, David, for everything. Lord, keep a bright light and a peace, brother. You know, occasionally I hear stories about people who hear helicopters deep in the woods. Don't quite know what it is, and I'm not quite sure what he heard was a helicopter. So I posted an article the other day on my Facebook page from Haim Eshed, E-S-H-E-D. He's the retired head of the Israeli Defense Ministry, space doctorate professor, and a retired general. And what he posted was almost identical to Paul Hellyer, a retired Canadian defense minister. The reason I bring this up is because these men are extremely credible. If you Google Haim Eshed, E-S-H-E-D, you'll find the article. And he said, aliens are curious about our world. They're here. That's exactly what Paul Hellyer said in the past. These people are coming out and they're saying things that are remarkable. And they have a lot to lose. Their integrity, respect, their credibility, but they're still saying it. What would be the motivation to say it if it wasn't true? I don't understand that. Haim also said that there are underground bases on Mars manned by U.S. aliens that do experiments, and the presidents are aware. That's what he said. Okay, new statement. My name is Shelly. I'm 38 years old, Navajo, and live in Flagstaff, Arizona. I'd like to share with you an experience I had when I was 13. I feel that I may have been visited by beings of another dimension. My apologies for the long, detailed story, but maybe one day you'll find time to read it through. The experience happened here in Flagstaff at a trailhead parking lot. Our town is at an elevation of 7,000 feet, covered in ponderosa trees, and at the base of the San Francisco Peaks and Mount Eldon. There were family issues that day, and I decided to walk off some frustration on one of the many trails by my home. I drove by the home for half a mile and turned off on a dirt road and parked at a trailhead parking lot. On the reservation, it is not unusual for teens as young as 12 to drive the dirt road, so my driving that day was normal for myself and my mom, but only up to the trail to the nearest gas station. I was pretty familiar with the trail up to about a half a mile. Not a cloud in the sky, the weather was perfect. It was very late in the evening and the sky was dark blue. After parking the truck, it appeared to be much too late to take a walk up the trail like I normally do, so I just turned on some music and sat there feeling emotional. While sitting there, I suddenly noticed that the truck tilted slightly as if someone climbed into the truck. I instantly turned the volume down and noticed movement at my right. A dark figure just sat on the passenger seat, a black, transparent figure of a woman with long hair. She seemed to be soaking wet and smelled of mud and rain. She set what looked like a bag between us, and I felt the bag brush up against my arm. She set another bag on her lap, and I just sat there looking straight ahead, as if I was to take her somewhere. I was completely shocked and looked straight ahead, too. I did not move. The bag was on her lap, fell to her feet, then began to shift. She knelt down and said in a very faint whisper toward the bag, "Shh, she can see you." End of quotes. It was a small child. She then picked up the child and her other bag that she had sat between us, and she stepped out of the truck. Before I could even begin to process the whole experience, another figure sat in the passenger seat. The figure was huge, about 6'5". I felt the truck tilt to the right as it sat down. I turned to look at him, and his head was turned and staring right at me. The figure was masculine, transparent black. He looked like a flat black shadow. He appeared to be completely covered in mud with twigs, leaves sticking to his body, and he seemed to have a hat of some sort on its head. His eyes were nothing, just completely see-through. He crossed his right leg and rested his hand on his right knee. I could not look at him for more than a second. I was too terrified and intimidated. After glancing at him, I just stared straight ahead and noticed in my peripheral that he too just looked straight ahead, as if waiting for me to drive somewhere. He held what looked like a cigar and brought it up to his mouth and back down to the rest on his leg. The smell of wet dirt was stronger, and I began to hear raindrops falling on top of the truck cab. There was not a single sign of rain that day, only perfect blue, cloudless skies. As I stared ahead into the forest, the hood of the truck faded, and in its place was a recently doused campfire with a bit of smoke rising from it. There was an old pot sitting next to it. The ground around it was wet. I was seeing a completely different setting. I instantly thought this figure was taking me into his world, and I closed my eyes and shook my head violently. Upon opening my eyes, the image of the campfire had disappeared, and I could no longer see the figure. The entire experience with these two figures lasted about 20 to 30 seconds, and I wonder what would have happened if I let the image of the campfire setting grow. Would I have just vanished from where I sat? And the woman, was she from that time and place? And was she trapped in that time and place? She seemed to be tired and harmless, like a defeated mother without any support. For the longest time, I assumed that we were long dead spirits hitchhiking, but after exploring the topic with other dimensional beings, I feel now that maybe the veil between our world and another was lifted that day in the woods. Wow. It's quite a story. And because it was on a reservation, I'll tell you this. When I was doing work with Harvey Pratt, Native American chief, he did the sketches in Tribal Bigfoot and in the Hooper Project. He did the forensic sketches of what people observed. Harvey and I went to a lot of different reservations on those trips, and we interviewed a lot of people, and we heard many phenomenal stories. And I heard several stories very similar to what this lady just told us. For some reason, it's pretty common on a reservation. But then again, there's a lot of things on a reservation that are pretty common that aren't when you get off. And I don't mean that as a diss at all, because I believe these things are happening out there. Thank you for the letters. Let's get into the stories this week. And these stories, all of them, shake me up bad. First story occurred in the Bermuda, which is out in the Atlantic. Mark Dombroski, 19 years old, missing March 19th, 2018. It was a Sunday. Disappeared at 1:09 a.m. Was found the following day, March 20th. Mark was raised in Media, Pennsylvania. It's a kind of a suburb of East Philadelphia. He attended the Archmere Academy in Delaware. It's a very hard school to get into, high academics. It's a Roman Catholic high school. He was a sprinter, long jumper, made it to the Delaware State Finals. And he also played soccer, rugby, and football. He was a stud athlete. He went to St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. That's a Jesuit university. He's a business major. And he was playing varsity rugby, and he was the co-captain as a freshman. That is astounding. To be a captain in a college sport takes true leadership. You got to be a really good person. He spent numerous summers doing missions to the Appalachians for a Media Presbyterian Church. Now, many of you ask that I include this information about the religious affiliations of these victims, and Mark's was very strong. Now, this is what the Bermuda State Police put out the day that Mark disappeared. And you can kind of see that he's a really good-looking boy, young man, stud athlete. So anyhow, his rugby team went to Bermuda on a tournament. And on March 18th, Saturday night, the team went out to drink. And they went to a place called the Doghouse Bar. And Mark was seen leaving the bar just down the street on King Street at 1:05 a.m. Now, there is a map of Bermuda. This is the Doghouse Bar, right near the water. And then right about in this area, at 1:05, he's caught on camera, right here. Now I'm going to leave this up. So the following day, they search. They don't find anything. His parents report him missing. And then on March 20th, he is found in a moat that's on the west side of a Fort Prospect. It's an old fort. Now, what's important about this? The coroner stated that Mark had fallen a significant distance and died, but he was in water. They didn't say he fell from the wall around the fort. Specifically, they didn't say that. They did say there was no foul play, but they were continuing to investigate. So, local statements for local consumption. They had an international group there to play rugby. They can't cause turmoil on this small island nation by saying something's wrong. Now, if you think about this, what's involved? Water, religion, a fall. He's an athletic academic, and point of separation. This is key. Mark left the bar. People at the bar said he was not intoxicated. Apparently, I didn't know this, it's legal to drink in Bermuda at the time when you're 18, because his whole team was in there. He said Mark was someone who took a lot of responsibility. Now, when he walked by the business on King Street and was caught on CCTV, he was on his cell phone. When they recovered his body, he had his cell phone and his wallet with him. Friends, this matches almost every case I wrote about in missing 411 a sobering coincidence. Mark Dombroski became another statistic. And without the knowledge that you and I have about these cases, no one is putting this together. What happened to him? Well, the fort was right next to the provincial police department of Bermuda, which is odd. Whatever happened right there. I can imagine the loss that Mark's parents went through. They raised a great young man who was academic, athletic, was on his way to greatness, and something stepped in and he lost his life. So if somebody related to the Dombroskis is watching this, my heart goes out to you in a huge way. Nothing can replace that. Very sorry. So the next case. This is a case that I have chased for at least 10 years. And it's something that I came upon right when I moved to Colorado about 11 years ago. Mike Walczak, W-A-L-C-Z-A-K, 61 years old. He went missing January 2005 in a place called Horse Mesa in Costilla, C-O-S-T-I-L-L-A County in southern Colorado. He was a contractor, loved the outdoors, relished the outdoors, knew how to handle himself, not somebody you'd worry about. Now, when he disappeared, there were several feet of snow around the residence. Now, he was watching this residence for a friend, and somebody asked to go check on him. Well, they checked on him. There were no track marks around in the snow. But he hadn't been gone very long. His truck, the keys, his wallet, everything was still in the house. There was a pot on the stove, and the stove was still on, and there was an odor of propane in the residence. Looks like he just stepped outside because he heard something and he was gone. Obviously, theft wasn't a motive. Wallet was there, everything was there. So, the yellow line represents the southern Colorado border into New Mexico. Horse Mesa is right here. It's a beautiful region. Now, Mike has a daughter named Sarah. This is Sarah and Mike. I want you to listen carefully to this. The daughter went out there and tried to get the reports from the Costilla County Sheriff. She went there 3 times. First, they told her the reports were locked up. She came back again, said the person who had the keys wasn't there. Then they gave her a phone number to call, and the person never returned the call. She never got that. There's a group called the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. It's like the statewide law enforcement agency for Colorado. So they went down at Sarah's request and asked the sheriff if they could help with the case. He said no. They asked for a copy of the reports. Sheriff said no. Why would he do that? Mike had lived in that area for 2 years, and he knew people, and everyone said he was a good soul. Now, this case got under me because Sarah wasn't getting any assistance, and that bothers me. So I knew somebody who lived down there who actually knew the politics of that county really well. And he said, Dave, I'll get these reports for you, no problem. So I hadn't heard from the guy in 3 weeks. I call him up, didn't answer, called him up, didn't answer, call him up. Finally he answers and says, yeah, what's up? I said, hey, what's the status of getting those reports? He said, Dave, just drop it. I said, what do you mean just drop it? not dropping it. He says, yeah, just drop it. He hangs up on me. Never heard from the guy again. Never got the reports. I personally called that sheriff's office. They gave me the name of a sergeant. Left 4 different messages. He'd never call me back. Now, Sarah. If anybody knows her, Sarah, Walczak. I can almost find anybody anywhere, and I can't find her. I found some posts that she made on some other sites, but Sarah needs to contact me because the FBI needs to get involved in this case. When law enforcement doesn't follow up on an incident, throws obstacles in its place, you can think nothing else other than they're complicit in something. Maybe a bad job, complete lack of an investigation, lost the reports, who knows? FBI needs to do some work on it. And Sarah needs to contact her local congressman and engage that congressman to push the FBI to get answers on this. People can't just disappear on us and have no follow-up by law enforcement. That's garbage. So, if the face looks familiar, again, that's Mike, her dad. That's Sarah. The last I can determine, she was either in California or Texas. But something is really wrong. And she needs the assistance of a congressman and the FBI to get involved in this and find out where her dad is. I'm sure the results won't be anything good, but she needs closure and she needs some answers. Next case also happened in Colorado, in an area I know pretty well, in the very southwest corner of the state. I spent a lot of time at Mesa Verde National Park. And there's a 2-hour show that I did for the History Channel called Vanished. And you can watch it on Amazon. I don't get any of the money. History Channel still owns the show. But it was an interesting piece of work. For 6 months, I worked with Prometheus Entertainment, the same producers of Oak Island and the same producers of Skinwalker Ranch. Very professional group. And that area of southwest Colorado has a lot of strangeness to it. I've written about a lot of cases out of that area in and around that park. This incident involves an older man named Alvie Webb, 86 years old. Now I'm going to stop you right there and say, I want you to go watch Missing 411 The Hunted if you haven't yet. It's free. It's on Amazon, YouTube. It's on YouTube Movies for free. The link is under the details of this video, or it's under the pinned comment. Look right under the video screen where it says comments, click it, and you'll see all the comments, and the pinned comment is the #1 comment. And there you'll also see the links to all of our sites where you can purchase books, watch movies, etc. Don't buy my books on Amazon, eBay, anywhere online other than our site. Somebody sent me a link, $180 for books now. So, anyhow, getting back to Alvie. This case will remind you of a case in Hunted, Missing 411 The Hunted, very much so. Alvie Webb, 86 years old, missing October 19th, 2019. Very recent case. From Muldrow, Oklahoma. He had hunted this area for the last 5 years. He knew the area. He was in good condition. He had no physical ailments. Friends describe Alvie as sharp as a tack. He spent a lifetime servicing his community by being a school teacher and a principal. That's what I talk about, servicing a community, helping it grow, nurturing its young. He was doing something called elk hunting. For some reason, a lot of people disappear elk hunting, and I can't figure that out why. So he was hunting in the San Juan National Forest at the end of Forest Road 564A. 564A, that's where the trail started. He was hunting with his son and his grandson. And they walked Alvie out on this trail 100 yards and had him sit down and said, "Grandpa, we'll come back for you in a bit." Well, they came back at 1 o'clock and Alvie wasn't there. They searched, they yelled, they fired guns off 3 times. Nothing, nothing, nothing. They called the sheriff's office and the sheriffs responded. And at 4 p.m. they arrived. At 5 p.m. the search started. That's fast. The elevation was about 9,500 feet. Now there's Alvie. Good man. Really good man. Serviced his community. Got to respect that. The sheriff said that they didn't expect that Alvie would walk far. Now, the red dot represents where Alvie was placed on Forest Road. Now, back here, this is Durango, Colorado. And way over here on the bottom left, this is Mesa Verde National Park. These mountain peaks up here, San Miguel Peak is right there. Mount Wilson's right here. San Miguel Wilson. This area, lots of water, lots of high peaks, lots of snow. In fact, during the search for Alvie, it did snow. Now, when the sheriff came out, he says, "I don't expect him to be very far," and they thought they'd find him quickly. They brought in canines, which didn't pick up a scent. They brought in a Black Hawk helicopter from an Air Force base. Didn't find any FLIR trail, forward-looking infrared radar. And there was a 6-day search by the Montezuma County Sheriff. There was also the Civil Air Patrol participated. It was massive for that little area. So let's think about this. He's an elk hunter. He's elderly. He's not going to go far. You have point of separation. Water is right nearby. If you've watched Missing 411 The Hunted, what should come immediately to your mind is the elderly hunter Tom Messick. He was placed in position by a group of people, told to stay there. They came back. He was never found. Massive search. Almost identical circumstances. The locations are different. The men are both very close to the same age. Both had hunted the areas many times before. Where are these gentlemen? There are no easy answers to this, because we've already gone through 2 hunting seasons with Alvie. He should have been found if he was there. Other hunters walking through the area often should have found him. So, 2 out of the 3 cases, men were never found. Mark Dombroski from Bermuda. His body's found under circumstances identical to many, many others or hundreds of others I've written and talked about. Michael Walczak. His daughter Sarah would really, really appreciate some help from somebody in that area of southern Colorado that could come up with the reports. What is happening down there? I will also tell you that that area in southern Colorado, high strangeness. Lots of mutilated cattle. Lots of strange things going on down there, let me tell you. And then Alvie Webb. His family would really appreciate it if he could be found. So friends, to me this has been kind of an emotional ride, this video. I have a lot of deep thoughts about the man whose son won't talk to him. If you are a son or a daughter and you've separated from your parents, have a forgiving, loving part in your heart to break down those barriers. You're an adult now. You have the ability to control the setting. I can guarantee your parents love you and miss you. in the vast majority of cases. And they're wondering if you're okay. They want you to be part of their life. They want you involved. And they miss you intensely. I only wish that was the scenario between Ben and I. Because you have one thing. You have hope. Don't give up on your kids. And kids, don't give up on your parents. Yeah, I know that there's a lot of parents out there that maybe won't be as flexible and won't go to counseling and are still living in the past on incidents between the both of you. Put those behind you. Life's too short. Either one of you could go out today and be killed in a car wreck. You want to live life with a positive heart and in a good way. Give your parents a break. And parents, if you've separated yourself from your son or daughter, break that barrier down. Things might have changed. I really appreciate you watching my channel. Please go through and give it a thumbs up. Please post it on your social media site. And our village is someplace special, and I appreciate it. Have a great week.